Dhaka Vishwavidyalaya, Computer Science and Engineering Department, Associate Professor Mr. Faisal Hasan, Dr. Faisal Hasan, in fact, sorry about that. We want to hear an academic approach to cybersecurity today. Doctor.
While the machine gets started, let me introduce myself. My name is Faisal Hasan. Actually, I'm an associate professor at Computer Science, Dhaka University. But before I start, I would like to say, I have two passions. One is about internet. I have involvement with the Internet Society since 2010, and I know there are some people here from Internet Society. And also the other passion I have is about education. I want to make sure that our next generation are developed in a proper way. And during the last 3 years, I was in the United States. I was a visiting research scholar at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, which is one of the top 5 ranked university in the US. So besides teaching security courses, I also had the opportunity to develop human resources. Actually, people who are working now at NSA, FBI, or even White House. So, I will share my experiences on internet and also curriculum development and the things I see as an academic in Bangladesh. So my concern right now is IoT. As you can see, there are a lot of posters about IoT. IoT is very popular. People are buying these new gadgets and installing those things. But there are some concerns about these things. So what are the concerns? Let me check with Brian Snyder. He is one of the most reputed computer scientists in security area. And he actually wrote in his blog about something like someone is learning how to take down the internet. So that was in July last year. So that was one of the speculation that somebody is probing the internet to test how vulnerable the critical service providers, like the people who provide DNS or other internet infrastructures. So in fact, his speculation was correct. In a few weeks' time, on September 16th, one of the journalists, his name is Mr. Brian Krebs, he writes blogs about different security incidents and also sometimes exposes people who are doing hacking and that kind of stuff. His blog was attacked by a massive DOS attack. It was such a massive attack that Akamai, the service provider who hosts this blog, denied to host his services anymore because it's too much for them to tackle this kind of attacks. So he was forced to take down his website to a different Google platform. And it didn't end it. So just to give you some flavor, what's happening in the DDoS, in the DDoS environment, one attacker takes advantage of some of the machines which are compromised. Those are the bots. And those bots can be used to generate attacks using reflections or amplifications things to some targets. And that can do massive devastations in targeted machines. So in September 27 last year, something happened on the internet. And nobody has seen before. There was a 1 terabits per second DDoS attack. And that all used the IoT devices. So we know the IoT devices are all connected to the internet, but those devices are vulnerable. So it's really easy to get in touch with those machines, get connected and get those machines compromised and use those IoT devices to launch massive DDoS attack on some targets. So that was on September 27 last year. And after a few days, October 21st, which is, I think, a historic day for the internet because a part of the internet was taken down in New York and many other places in the US, East Coast and West Coast. And services like Twitter and many other Netflix, even CNN was taken down for a few hours. And nobody thought about this kind of attacks, these massive attacks before. There are DDoS attacks before, but this was one of the most devastating ones that took down the internet. So this was something that nobody has seen before, especially from a service provider like Dyn, who provides managed DNS services for Netflix or CNN or many other big players. And they were taken down for 2 hours. And it didn't end here. And a few weeks later, there was a massive attack that shut down the internet in Liberia, in a small country like Liberia. So it all happened because Liberia is not a big player in the international space. So what happened here? So somebody was trying to push the limits to see how we can shut down the internet in one of the countries. So it's not far away that if somebody wants to shut down a specific country, they can do it if they don't take precautions before. So these are really alarming things. What is much more disturbing is that the source code of the bot that was used to launch this attack was released. So that means it's good, like people can analyze the source code and see how the malware behaves. But it can be a platform, it can be used by some other people having bad intentions to create new variety of bots. And that's what's happening in today's world. As you can see, I made a live status check of some of the Mirai bots visible across the world. As you can see, there are in last 24 hours, so many thousands of Mirai bots available in different countries. And those devices, IoT devices, have things like the security cameras or your smart TVs or many other devices which stays connected most of the time. And those can be used to create massive attacks like the ones I've just shown. So what's the problem here? The problem is the IoT devices are really, really inexpensive these days, and people want to buy inexpensive ones. And those manufacturers, they don't have any kind of thoughts about security. So most of the cases, they provide default passwords, and you cannot change the default passwords. It's really easy to guess the default password and get into those devices and compromise those devices to launch massive DOS attack, like the ones that are happening. So also, not only just the device itself, but also the protocol that's been used with those devices, like the Zigbee protocol, has been exploited by researchers a long time ago, a few years ago, and DEF CON. And those are really vulnerable things. So if we don't take care of these things, if we don't take responsibility of these kind of devices, like if you want to adopt something in your home, and if you don't know how to take care of it, you're vulnerable. So thinking of IoT, we need to be careful about it. Like in Bangladesh, I know the smart camera, security cameras are really popular. Everybody's installing security cameras. Some of my friends have in their home security cameras. They're connected to the internet, and they check the status from remote places. Like sometimes you leave your 3-year-old kid at home, and there's a maid taking care of it, and you want to see how the maid is taking care of the kid. But the problem is, these devices are so much vulnerable that I wanted to check, whether I can get to some of the devices. So there is a tool that's called Shodan. It's like a search engine, like Google. But this search engine is basically, you can find out all these internet-connected devices on internet based on their protocol, based on their vendor, or any other things like locations or in this company name where those are installed. So you can see it's really, it takes a few minutes time to find out how many vulnerable IoT devices like security cameras are available for you to hack into and create bots into those things and later use those things for launching massive DOS attacks. So these are some of the concerns that are raised by people who actually care about the internet, like the Internet Architecture Board or IETF. There are special sessions from last year organized how to tackle this situation. Who is responsible? Is the vendor? Is the government? Is the user? So nobody actually has a solution for that. But this is the time we actually need to think seriously about these kind of things. So there is so DOS attacks are not new. It's been there for ages. But there are some best practices, like things like the BCP38. So I'm not sure whether our ISPs follow this BCP38 kind of best practices. So one of the reasons why DOS attacks are so much prevalent is that you can spoof IP address. If you can spoof IP address, then you can create dynamic, like distributed denial of service attacks from hundreds of machines. And if you follow the BCP38, then it actually reduces the chance of IP spoofing. So in fact, due to the proliferation of DDoS attacks in the last few years, the massive ones, the BCP38 has been revised to give RFC 7039. So it actually contains some guidelines for service providers how to make sure that your customer end devices IP addresses are not being spoofed on. So this is one of the things that can be done. So let me come down to one other point. How did Dyn, the company who actually suffered massive DDoS attack in October 21st, actually resolve the issue in 2 hours time? The issue is not, the mechanism is not their only technical expertise, but also collaboration. So they didn't just try to solve the problem themselves. They reach out to the law enforcement people, they reach out to the other technical community, and actually together they solve the problem. So that is a massive, I think that is one of the key things in the internet space. In the internet, it's not, it's not owned by anybody. It's a common resource. We all take care of the internet by collaboration. So there's a term that's called multi-stakeholderism on the internet. So if we think of solving these kind of issues, we need to bring people together, like the academia, this industry people, this government, everybody together. In fact, let me share some of my experience. Like this time, I've been invited by this company, Beatles, and I feel really lucky because I've been here in Bangladesh long time, but I never get invitation in this kind of venues because I think there's a gap between the industry and the academia. It's not like that we don't want to come here. We really want to come here. We need to get the venues. We need to get to the context and that kind of stuff. But this time I was really happy to be here and to get ideas exchanged between the industry partners as well. So it didn't stop here. And last December, I think 2 months ago, December 20th, there was an attack in Ukraine. And nobody knows whether the Russian government attacked it or whether some hacker bodies, but definitely governments has a lot of incentives to attack other nations. As you can see, a few years ago, the US actually attacked the Iranians, the nuclear plant. This is a well-known fact. So now cybersecurity is in the agenda for international politics. Let me show you some statistics from the last, just before the election and last year, the US election, there was a survey done, and the question was, does a political candidate's position on cybersecurity impact your level of support for the candidate? 53% said yes. That means majority of people think this is a very important issue. And the candidates, unfortunately, didn't cover the cybersecurity issue that much. As you can see, they both suffered. Both parties suffered about these things. Although we have a winner, as you can see, but I think it actually shaken the democracy in US. That is a big thing that never happened before. So let me share some of my experience in US in educating students, some of the top students in the field of cybersecurity. So what are the US government doing to mitigate the gap between the number of experts or skilled people in cybersecurity who are needed, whereas the job requirements? Because in the US, people say, I worked with a lot of hackers in US, we invited them to come to our students and get involved with them. And sometimes they didn't allow me to talk to them because they don't want to show their identities, that kind of shit, but I kind of invited them all the time. So in US, the government realized that there's a huge shortage, and most of the students who actually have the skills don't want to go and work for the government. They want to go for Google or Microsoft. So how come the government get the required skills, the required people? So the government actually has a cybersecurity education framework which defines different skill levels, different fields which are within the cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is not about technology. It incorporates things like psychology, things like business, accounting, law. So if we are building people who actually are only doing technical stuff, we're actually doing just small part of it. So this framework provides a guideline for the industry, the universities, and the students and the teachers to see what are the different areas where cybersecurity skills are needed. So based on that, they can pinpoint where there is a shortage. So this is kind of the framework that's called the NICE initiative. And under that NICE initiative, I think it's been there for a few years, almost 10, 15 years. There's a Center of Excellence concept. The NSA sponsors or accreditates some of the big universities, like 4-year universities or 2-year universities or colleges, having their security curriculum approved by NSA. They have to have certain number of courses, and based on that, they give some sort of accreditation that this is a NSA certified academic program. So this kind of initiative actually motivates students to get involved with this kind of curriculum and get themselves trained. So this is not the only one. Another special program I was privileged to be one of the advisors is called the Cyber Scholars Program. And that's how can we bring students into security? Because everybody is doing something else. So why can't we give some scholarship to the students? The scholarship involves giving them full funding and a huge stipend. The goal is that if we give like 2 years, then they have to work for the government for 2 years. Afterwards, they can switch to other places. So that was one of the ways the government is attracting students. And the program is designed in such a way that they have to do hands-on stuff, not just the theoretical education. And that is one of the big, I think, disturbing things for me, because when I see cybersecurity at the universities, most of the places is like theoretical, no hands-on. But security is one of the fields, you have to be hands-on. All right? So this is one of the, I think, core ideas that we can actually do here in Bangladesh as well. Because in Bangladesh, we need to get more students involved. And also, they have a culture of competitions. Some of the competitions are organized by the government, namely the National Cyber Defense Competition, which involves in different areas. So in different areas, they have a champion, then they all go to a national level and they compete. So this culture actually promotes this defense mechanism and attack mechanism. So you're given a system which you have to defend, and also there is a red team that actually attacks. So this is involved in the curriculum these days, especially in the community colleges. Because if you think of large, big universities like Dhaka University, most of the students finish their degree here, they're actually going abroad. What about the colleges? We have 2,000 or 1,800 colleges on the National University. What about the schools? So cybersecurity is one of the fields where you actually cannot build expertise in like 1 course or 2 courses. It's a lifelong, it's a decade-long practice. All right, I can see some of the people here, like they actually didn't have the proper education in cybersecurity. I mean the formal education, but they actually learned themselves. So somehow they got the passion to do it. So our job as educationists to develop the passion. And we need the support from the government, we need the support from the business sectors to do that. So if we don't develop the human resource, no matter how much we develop the sophistication, the technical expertise, all the things, it will not be useful. So to solve the shortage of human resource in the US, so they actually have created some sort of cyber reserve. As I can see, one of the speakers mentioned about creating a pool. I think that's a really good direction. If we can make sure all the people in Bangladesh or also outside Bangladesh, Bangladeshi people who actually are really interested in developing our human resources or solving problems, they can come in the same umbrella to create a cyber reserve. So US is doing that, and that's really successful and exciting. Not only that, what about the schools? And the schools, we can go to the schools. I know in schools these days there are a lot of programs, like the government has created 2,000 labs, I know, in the schools to get them involved in IT. Why can't we go there and teach them some of the basic things, right? So I am involved in one of the projects that's called Code Club Bangladesh. So this is just the beginning. And we are kind of we have a curriculum, and we're going to different schools to get them introduced in the programming. And if I'm here, as long as this Code Club is here, then I can definitely push some of the security concepts in those curriculum. That's some of the ways that we can actually build up the human resource. So in Bangladesh, so when I talk to some people in Bangladesh, they said, okay, you're talking about US. Nobody's going to attack in Bangladesh, all right? But the basic principle of security or warfare, I can quote something from Sun Tzu, who is a really famous Chinese philosopher general. He had an interesting quote. He said, "He will win who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared." So if you prepare yourself, then you can always waiting, something is happening. So in Bangladesh, we have to be vigilant like that. We have to prepare. We have to prepare our human resource and all the things we are talking about here. We should make these things into action. So in Bangladesh, the scenario is that not many people are getting the chance to get educated. I know in this room, there are many students who actually are really interested, but where to begin? So we need to tap into those students or professionals. How can they get educated in cybersecurity in the right way? So in Dhaka University, we have cybersecurity, but in undergrad, it's optional. I'm sure almost all the universities have security. Either those are not offered, those are just in the syllabus, or even though those are offered, those are optional. So the undergrad student, they don't know anything about security after they graduate. And in Bangladesh, not many people do masters, very, very few, right? So how can we do this? And that's not a problem only in Bangladesh, but in US as well. Because cybersecurity, if you introduce one course, it doesn't do anything. Just give you some idea. But you have to have, like when you learn coding, if you are introduced with the security and how to write secure code, you actually develop better coding skills. So we have to tap into this kind of stuff. And also the competitions. We do a lot of competitions here in Bangladesh, but nothing in security. Because competition is one of the things that students can actually get their hands dirty and develop their skill and transfer their skills to other people as well. So these are some of my recommendations. And also, I mentioned something about this IoT. So we are embracing, we're getting all IoT devices. But before we get, can we have some sort of policy, some sort of check and balance that we will only get those IoT devices which actually have some sort of security features where the passwords are not hard-coded? Can we do that kind of policy to check and balance this kind of stuff, or at least educate people who are installing these devices have no idea that their machines, their devices can be used to launch massive attacks like the one I've just discussed. So also things like the critical infrastructures, like we're setting up our nuclear power project, but as far as I know, cybersecurity is an afterthought. So we have to change that attitude. Like we should make sure that cybersecurity is considered from the ground zero. Otherwise, it'll be too late. So these are some of my, my personal views, and I think I've taken enough time, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope if anybody has any question, I think after the session I'm available. Thank you.